This video is going to focus on a couple of skills where people have really been struggling, and it's been getting in the way of your problem solving and getting the correct answer, particularly division and division with decimals. So this is a type of problem you've seen before, you will see again, and we want to make sure we know how to work with this. A truck driver took 4 hours and 18 minutes to travel 193.75 miles. How many miles did the truck travel per hour? So what it's asking us is to go from that time of 4 hours and 18 minutes and figure out the distance it would travel in just 1 hour. To begin, everybody should be setting up a table. So our labels are going to be hours and miles. The problem tells us in our first step we have 4 hours and 18 minutes. We don't want to write 4 hours and 18 minutes in our table. We want to be able to represent that as a decimal so that we can go straight from that time of 4 hours 18 minutes straight to just 1 hour. As it is, we're not going to be able to divide our miles by 4 hours and 18 minutes. So we need to represent that as a workable number in a decimal form. So the challenge is to figure out how to represent 18 minutes as a decimal. 18 minutes, as it is a fraction. 18 out of 60. So if we want to get it to be a decimal, we need to get rid of that denominator. To do that, we're going to have to divide by 60. And whatever you do to one side, you must do to the rest. So if we divide each side by 60, we will get rid of that denominator and we can get it to be a decimal. So the hard part becomes doing 18 divided by 60. Well, obviously, 60 goes into 18 0 times. So we're going to have to take that 18 and add a decimal and add a 0. So now we have 180 divided by 60. 60 goes into 180 3 times. So we can represent 18 divided by 60 as 0.3. Or 0.3 over 1. So we can take this 4 hours 18 minutes and now represent it as 4.3 hours. And in those 4.3 hours, the truck travels 193.75 miles. We want to go straight from that 4.3 hours to 1 hour. To do that, we're going to have to divide each side by 4.3. Of course, whatever we do to one side, we must do to the rest. So we're going to do 193.75 divided by 4.3. This is an area where people have been struggling, so I'm actually going to do it off to the side. I'll work in red. So we have 193.75 divided by 4.3. People often get confused what to do with the decimal here. Do I just treat this like 43 and do 193.75 divided by 43? Well, as you see in this table over here, these two numbers are in ratio to each other, 4.3 and 193.75. So dividing by a decimal can be pretty tricky. So we want to get rid of it. So let's take this number 4.3, and turn it into 43. In order to do that, we have to multiply by 10. So it's essentially like, hey, we're going to call this 43. We're going to make this 10 times bigger. And you've heard me say this before. Whatever we do to one side, we must do to the rest. So we're going to make this 10 times bigger too. And instead of call it 193.75, we're going to call it 1,937.5. If you notice, this works because they're still in the same ratio. So that's all you do when you're dividing with a decimal. If we want to get rid of it, just make the side with the decimal however many times larger you need to, and just do the same thing to the other side. So in this case, we made both of them 10 times bigger. So now we could divide. 43 goes into 1 0 times, 9 0 times. So now you have 193. You would have to do your work off to the side. And one thing I can do over here is kind of just make a little table. Think, okay, 43 times 1 is 43, and that will help take away the guess and check. 43 times 2 is going to be 86. 43 times 3 equals 129. So we're still not there yet. We can probably fit another 43. 43 times 4 equals 172. And let's see if we can fit another group of 43 in. 43 times 5 is 215. So 43 goes into 193 4 times, and that equaled 172. So you would have to do the subtraction, and we would wind up with, I'll do it in a different color, 3 minus 2 is 1, 9 minus 7 is 2, so you wound up with 22. Then we would bring down the 7, so now we would have 227 divided by 43. I could use the multiplication table that I already set up, and we would find that it goes in 5 times, and that gave me 215. So we would do the subtraction, minus 215, and we would find out remaining that we have just 12. Make sure I did this right. And then we would still have this decimal right here, and we would bring down the 5. And we would bring down this 5, so it would be 43 goes into 125, and it would be 2 times. And I'm just going to stop there with 45.2. So 1937.5 divided by 43. We'll just say 45.2. Now looking at it, I think I actually made an error, and if you can find that, then great job to you. This is why it's a lot easier doing it on paper. But this is the general gist of how you're going to work with decimals. In this next problem, same idea. Alex can read 1 1/4 pages per minute in his book. At that rate, how long will it take him to complete the 158-page book? So you're going to do the same thing. Pages minutes. 1 1/4 we know is a decimal. 1.25 per 1 minute. How long, at that rate, how long will it take them to read 158 pages? So we want to wind up going from 1.25 straight to the target of 158. So for this, you would do 158 divided by 1.25. Now, same idea. Divided by 1.25. We want to be able to do this division, so we're going to make this 1.25 into 125 by multiplying it by 100 to get that decimal place to move over 2 spots. So we're going to have to do the same thing over here. We're going to multiply by 100, and it's going to become 15,800. And now, just like normal, you'll do that division. And you can see just by looking at it, the video is already getting long, so I'm not going to do all of the steps in this case, but it obviously goes in one time over here, and we would do the subtraction off to the side. 158 minus 125 would be 33 remaining. And then we bring down the 0, so it's 330. And it would go into 2 times, which is 250. So we would do the subtraction, and you would keep continuing with that process. And you would wind up with, and I'm not going to see it all the way through, but you can check and see if you get the same thing. 126.4. So it would take 126.4 minutes. Now this is what I want you to start getting in the habit of. Typically in a problem like this, I will say how many hours and minutes will take them to finish the book. So you almost have a new ratio table happening that you need to start working with when we start talking about time. Hours and minutes. So we need to take now, we have that 126.4 minutes and figure out how many that is. So we know there's 60 minutes in 1 hour. So what we're saying is we have 2 hours and 6.4 minutes. Because 2 hours would be 120 minutes. Well, what if I said I wanted you to tell me in seconds now how many that is? How many is 0.4 minutes is how many seconds? So you would need to set up, and you can think about that as a fraction too. 0.4 minutes, there's 60 seconds in 1 minute. So 0.4 minutes is going to be how many seconds? And that would be 4/10. So you need to think about, okay, 0.4 means 4/10 of a minute. So if we're talking about there's 60 seconds, that would be like 24 seconds. And so another way we could express that is 2 hours, 6 minutes, 24 seconds. And those are the other conversions that I want you to start being able to do as well. Give answers in hours, minutes, and seconds, especially when asked.